Meetings are taking place around the city on developing a new system for enrolling in public schools. The goal is to have a single system for district schools and charter schools. To tell us about the effort are two guests from the Boston Compact, a member of the steering committee and the chief of education for Mayor Walsh, Rahn Dorsey, and the chief collaboration officer, Rachel Weinstein. Thank you both very much for being with us.
How are you, Chris?
I want to start with Ron. Before we get into the advantages of something new, what's wrong with what we have now?
Well, it's a very complicated system for parents, and so you're talking about multiple systems, for one, between our district schools and charter schools. Different times of the year where you're trying to apply different application processes. It takes a lot of work and places a lot of burden on parents to find the right choice for their children.
Rachel, what's the potential here for making this work better?
The potential is to make things easier for families and to have them go to one place, have one application for both BPS and charter schools, one deadline, and an offer at the end.
Ron, what are you hearing so far? Because, I mean, you can put information, put lists of schools and deadlines, but, you know, a parent confronting is going to say, well, what's that school like? I mean, and what's my child like? I mean, how do you bridge those two things?
So part of this is about information as well. So when parents are saying this is a burden and hard for us to make this choice, part of it is the asymmetry of information. So we don't have the same information about schools. It's hard to get information about one school or the other and really make a comparison. Part of what we want to do is to present apples to apples data on program offerings, on student performance, and on aspects of school quality.
Rachel, this is one more step in a long process here at the Compact of getting these different types of schools to work more in sync. Why is it important for them to be in sync?
That's an excellent question. I think there are two reasons. One is again, to make the process easier for families. But more broadly, we have something like 75,000 children in the city who are in schools, district schools, charter schools, Catholic schools, private schools. And to think about the city in a coordinated manner and really how are we making sure every neighborhood has the grades it needs for the population in that neighborhood? How are we sharing what practices work and scaling those? The potential for how much more effective we can be when we work together is really great.
Okay. Ron, what about the ability to get more quality for people? I mean, we always had the sense here that the quality is limited. Is there a way to make more people happier, you think?
I think so. I mean, so one, we're talking about quality varies inside of BPS. It varies inside the cohorts of charter schools as well. We think the whole can become more powerful if we really start having conversations about boosting that quality and using best practices. Enroll Boston doesn't take on all of those best practice exchanges, but one of the things that we think it will allow us to do is to continue a conversation about addressing special education and English language learner needs. This is something that the Compact has already been committed to, but if we're going to move to a unified enrollment system, we have to make sure that there's proportional capacity in our district schools and in our charter schools to serve all learners. And this is an opportunity to really take that discussion on.
Rachel, I guess it sounds like there's going to be pressure on the charter schools. I know some of them are answering the call, but you know, previously people were saying they weren't serving enough of these students.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you ask, right? So there's certainly a perception that charter schools are not serving the highest need students. Whether or not that's reality depends on who you're talking to, but they certainly, the charter leaders that we work with are certainly wanting to address that and show that they can serve all students or that they are serving all students, and to think about the city as a whole and really be a good partner with the district.
Yeah. Well, what about the cost of transportation? I mean, a lot of people like citywide schools sometimes. Some of the schools like to draw from a citywide pool of students, but you know, you also got to keep the cost of transportation under control.
Sure. So two things. Boston has one of the highest transportation costs in public education in America at about $110 million a year. And we're doing a great service to all students, district, charter, and Catholic, meeting the transportation needs of students. This has the potential to help us reduce those transportation costs. First of all, we need a legislative change to make this system work, and that would be for charters to be able to recruit at neighborhood levels versus citywide levels. If we can get there, there's the chance then that there are quality schools closer to the places that neighbors live, you choose something closer to home, it might help us make a dent on transportation. I want to underscore that that's not what we're leading with, though. This is really an opportunity to access great schools, access great information about those schools, but it could be a residual benefit that transportation costs are reduced. By how much, I'm not sure.
Rachel, one of the things I think we need to make clear to our viewers here, this is not a plan that's already made, because right now we're at the stage where we're having conversations. Explain how that's supposed to work.
So what's happened so far is that the BPS and charter leaders have come to a table and we've said, is there sufficient agreement between these two sectors to even be worth a community conversation? I think that was a truly open question. And I'm pleased to say that there is, that we came to agreement on some core principles that both the district and the charter schools, and most importantly the mayor, believe will serve families and students. But we're still at the level of core principles. So to your point, like, how do we implement this? What does it actually look like? We really need a lot of help from family members and community members to think about, if this is what we want to get to, how do we get there? And so we are having a series of 7 community meetings beginning this Thursday and going through early December. And we're really excited to hear what will work for families in terms of some of the things Ron's already mentioned, like what information would they want?
Ron, I imagine in addition to what you can get from parents or even their children, there are some interesting comments to be heard about the potential partners with schools too, because if you're looking at a community-based definition of education, that's got to be in there.
I think it's got to be in there as well. You know, there are partners who are hungry for an opportunity to interface with schools and kids who live in that neighborhood as much as possible to provide supports to families. Great article in the Washington Post recently about the challenges that the Promised Neighborhoods initiative is having in cities where choice is citywide, because it means that they don't get to work with families who live in those neighborhoods most often. And so you think about our own work at Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative right now. If we have more kids from that neighborhood going to school in that neighborhood with great options, does that make Promised Neighborhoods more powerful because DS&I and its partners can really support those families on a continuous basis? Quite possibly.
Rachel, if people want some more information about this planning process, what's the best way to look that up?
The simplest thing is to go to the Boston Compact website, which is www.bostoncompact.org, and we have all the community meetings listed there.
Thank you both very much, Rachel Weinstein and Ron Dorsey. In a moment, a look at racial disparity in time served before trial.